Hello Year 2, how are you? And welcome to today's history lesson. Now over the last few terms we have been looking at various explorers, haven't we? We've looked at Neil Armstrong, we've looked at Scott of the Antarctic, and we've also learnt about Christopher Columbus. Now today all of the knowledge that we've gained over the last couple of terms is going to come together, because today we're going to be comparing two of these explorers. We're going to be comparing Neil Armstrong and Scott of the Antarctic. Okay, so we're going to be looking for ways in which these two men are similar and ways in which they are different. Now, before we do this, we need to try and remember as much as we can about these two explorers, because even though we've learned about Neil Armstrong quite recently, so you probably remember lots of information about him, it's been quite a while since we looked at Scott of the Antarctic. So therefore, we need to make sure all of the knowledge that we have about Scott of the Antarctic is brought to the front of our brains so that we're able to use it in our activity for today. So to start the lesson today, we are going to give ourselves a high five. Now you'll be quite familiar with this activity because we've done it quite a bit in class. So on the left hand side, in the left hand, you need to write 5 facts that you remember about Scott of the Antarctic. And in the right hand, you need to write 5 facts that you can remember about Neil Armstrong, okay? Now you'll find this worksheet on your resource, Year 2 History, 29th of June, resource 1. So if you could pause the video now and see what you can remember about these two men. Okay, Year 2, so were you able to remember 5 facts about Scott of the Antarctic and 5 facts about Neil Armstrong? Fantastic, well done. Well, I had a little go too, and I'm going to show you my facts now. Now, don't worry if your facts aren't the same as mine. We might have completely different facts, but that might be a good thing because you might be able to use some of my facts for our activity at the end of the lesson if you don't have them already. So I'm going to start with Neil Armstrong because he was the last explorer that we learnt about. So what facts have I got about Neil Armstrong? Well, my first fact was he was 16 years old when he got his pilot's license. Remember, we learnt that Neil Armstrong could fly a plane before he could drive a car. So there we go. There's my first fact. Now, what's my second fact? Oh, here we go. He joined NASA in 1962. I wonder if anybody else has that fact. I'll be very impressed if you can remember that date. So he joined NASA in 1962. My third fact, he said that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind when he stepped onto the moon. Remember, we watched the video of the moon landing and we could hear him saying that as he stepped onto the moon, couldn't we? Okay, so that's my third fact. My fourth fact, he was born on the 5th of August, 1930. And finally, my fifth fact, he went to the moon with Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins. Remember, Michael Collins stayed on the command module Columbia, didn't he? While Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong went down to the moon on the Eagle. Remember in the video, it said the Eagle has landed. So there we go. There's my 5 facts about Neil Armstrong. I wonder if any of you got similar facts to me. Okay, now let's move on to Scott of the Antarctic. Now I had to think a little bit harder about this one. So let's see what facts I could remember. So my first one, Robert Falcon Scott, so remember that was his name, wasn't it? Robert Falcon Scott was born on the 6th of June, 1868 in Devonport, which we found out was in Plymouth, didn't we? Okay, so that's my first fact. My second fact, he volunteered for the British Antarctic Research Mission. So that was the reason why he went in the first place, wasn't it? Because he had volunteered for the British Antarctic Research Mission. Okay, my next one. He became a naval cadet at the age of 13 and served on several Royal Navy ships across the world in the 1880s and 1890s. So remember, he was part of the Navy, wasn't he, Scott of the Antarctic? Okay, my next fact. After his first journey, he was promoted to captain. Remember, he came back from his first journey and everybody considered him a hero, didn't they? So therefore, he got promoted to captain. And then that links to my final point, because remember, in the 1970s, lots of people's opinion of Scott of the Antarctic changed because a man called Robert Huntford wrote a book about him, didn't he? And remember in class, we did a debate. So half of us were for Scott of the Antarctic and half of us were against, okay? So lots of people's opinion changed. Now, there are my 5 facts for each explorer. Did you manage to get any of the same ones or were they different? Okay, well, we can put it all together at the end, so that's brilliant either way. So now what we're going to do is look at different facts about them, each man, okay, each explorer. So we're going to have some facts about Scott of the Antarctic, some about Neil Armstrong, and some will relate to both explorers, okay? And we need to decide which one is which. So the first one, who am I? Armstrong, Scott, or both? I was the first to reach my destination. Well, let's have a think. Scott of the Antarctic, was he the first to reach his destination? Well, we know that Scott of the Antarctic was trying to get to the South Pole, wasn't he? But was he the first? No, he wasn't, was he? Remember, the Norwegian Amundsen beat him to it, didn't he? He got there first. So therefore, this statement is not going to be about Scott of the Antarctic. Was Armstrong the first to reach his destination? Well, remember, Armstrong was the first man to walk on the moon, wasn't he? Even though spacecraft had been to the moon before, no one had ever walked on the moon. So therefore, yes, this statement relates to Armstrong. Okay, let's have a look at the next one. Okay, I was part of a race to the destination. Okay, so who was part of a race? Well, we know that Armstrong was part of a race, wasn't he? Can you remember the name of the race that he was part of between the USA and Russia? Yes, that's right. He was part of the space race, wasn't he? So therefore, yes, this statement relates to Armstrong. What about Scott? Well, yes, Scott was part of a race as well, wasn't he? They were both trying to get to the South Pole first, him and Amundsen. So therefore, we can say that this statement relates to both of the explorers. Okay, last one. I travelled in the 20th century. Remember, the 20th century is, for example, 1932, 1955, okay? Anything 19 something. Let's have a think. Well, when did Armstrong travel to the moon? Can you remember the date? Yes, that's right. He went in 1969, didn't he? So that's in the 20th century. So therefore, this statement relates to Armstrong. What about Scott? Well, Scott travelled in 1901. That was when his first journey was. So therefore, that's in the 20th century too, because it's 1901. So therefore, this statement relates to both. So here are some other statements. We've got, I was born in the USA. Someone beat me to my destination. I travelled by boat. I was born in Plymouth. I didn't survive my journey. I travelled by spacecraft and I was part of a team. Okay, so I would like you to pause the video and have a think. Are each of these statements talking about Armstrong, Scott, or both explorers? Pause the video now and have a go.